Today, we're going to get some more loft work done. We've got these windows, a couple windows, these two here. They are going to be in the wall frame, looking out towards us right now. So we need, first things first, we need to get set up. Then we need to put a piece of steel from here to there. Step one is get some strength into it. Put that in between my legs. The reason for this is I don't want any movement in and out of the windows. There's no guts really in the windows, and the timber frame, there's not a huge amount of timber in the wall either because there's like two big windows in it. So this will run between the windows. I'll show you what goes on with that, but yeah, it will end up, you actually see this still from the inside of the room, but it'll be all painted black, the same as window, and you'll barely notice it. So we'll get this up fixed in place first. Now, if I've done my calculations correct, when I put all this Oregon timber beam in, that should be pretty well bang on plumb. Spot on. Has to get things correct the first time. What I've done here on the bottom of this steel post, that's just dangling from the top at the moment, that will basically sleeve over top of this, and then I've just basically tack that into the timber, and then when everything's where it needs to be, that will locate it perfectly, and then we'll just put a couple screws in there through the side of the steel, and then everything's nice and clean. So I've worked out where our windows are going to be sitting as far as height off the ground. I've got to be a little bit mindful of this rafter. I don't want the window striking out. If you can picture a window in here, I don't want the window striking out too close to this because we'll have to box this out and leave it as a little bit of a bulkhead gyprock. So that was something to keep in mind. But I think we've got the right height, so we can start knocking up some frames, and hopefully Marco's around the place so we can get a lift. We'll bloody turn this, whoop, that's not down. Turn it down so you can hear us without yelling. Rightio, so as I said, there will be a window either side of this, so we need an opening in our frame for the window to be in. When you're knocking up frames, this is the piece of timber that will be sitting against that bit of steel. Eventually this will get cut out, so I'll put, that's for our lintel, notch that out for a 120 by 35 lintel that goes on edge. A lintel basically supports any load because there's nothing, if you can picture the window here, there's effectively nothing in there that supports anything above it, so you need to put a piece of timber or something above it to support everything up. It's not as critical in this case. There will be bugger all weight, and it's only iron on the back, or on this side, sorry, and only gyprock on the other side, but doesn't mean you don't do it properly. I've also put two little grooves there and one there because this piece will be getting cut out after it's in situ. The reason I leave it in there for now is because it'll be a floppy nightmare to deal with lifting the frame up and then putting it in place. So those notches are just basically so I have to run a handsaw right to the end, which will be still sitting here. need to lift this up. Okay, after one hell of a struggle, that frame is in. Now, we just need to put these two plates in. There and there. This is what I was talking about before. That notch right there. Now we need to cut this, where are we? Cut this out, and this whole piece of timber will be removed. Time to put our windows in. So I'm doing a little bit different because we have that steel in the middle of the windows. I'm going to pull, and obviously one window either side. The windows come with these linings on them. So basically when you go to gyprock and then you just put an ave around the outside of your window. But I don't want an ave, I want to keep the middle of the windows as close as possible. So I'm going to pull one side of the lining off each one, and then we'll notch out, and it will basically, the fin on the front of the window will fix to the front of the steel, and it'll be nice and tight, and we'll actually paint the post black so it looks like the window itself. When installing a window, obviously we want everything plumb, square, yada yada yada. So we packed our frame up a little bit. So with these window packers, heap of different sizes, so we can pack that along there and make sure our bubble needs to come up a fraction. Needs to come up another 3 mil or so. We'll see what our bubble's doing there. That's bloody beautiful. So with that, we know our post is plumb, so we can fix that off. window frame's in, the trim around is done, Oregon. Now we've just got to put a few little trimmers in the stud work because that roller door pushes through that wall, so we'll just have to cut our iron around that. Now we can start sheeting basically. I'll still have to put a couple more trimmers in down the bottom of the window so we can catch the top a little bit of the iron. But yeah, start slabbing some iron up. So slapping this iron on, the beauty about iron, super quick, relatively cheap, and it looks relatively good as well. But if you don't have everything plumb and straight, you always pick it up with iron because it's always got these straight vertical lines. So when you're coming up to, when I first started, I made sure, well, when I first started the whole build, everything's been plumb, level, square. It just helps right through the whole job. So when these windows go in, like I was telling you before, they go in level anyway, but then when you start to put your iron on, make sure you start with a plumb line, and then when you come up towards where you've got to cut around nice and neat, up the top I've got 30 mil, and down the bottom I've got 33 mil. It's only 3 mil, but to make with iron you can shrink and stretch. So at the moment that's about 30 mil, 33. You can actually stretch, and effectively you're pulling the corrugations like minuscule amounts, but you're pulling them flatter. So you can just, it's easier on a roof because you can stand on it, but that was 33 mil. We'll have a look what it is now. That's bang on 30 mil. Let's show you that. So now when I go to cut my next sheet, where I have to actually cut around this window, I'm not cutting out of line to the flutes. So everything looks nice, it's yeah, and it's easier to mark out and flick out as well. So there's a little trick for you. Cutting around this frame, I have made it harder for myself, but it's purely for looks. The reason I put this on first and not over top of the iron is purely because if you do that, well, one, it's going to sit out another 16 mil. That's the depth profile of the corrugated iron. But you get all these flutes and it just looks crap in my opinion. So with it butting in, it effectively looks nice and tidy like that. But it makes more work for you. You got to be way more precise because you don't have effectively any cover on these, so they've got to be nice tight gaps, even gaps. The way I sort of do it is get an offcut. This is the lap basically, so that it's just an offcut that I took off of behind the roller door there. You can either mark, I'll put a mark here, and you can measure from that mark to the timber and take a mil or two off, or you can mark it on your template here and then go over and transfer it onto the actual sheet sitting over there. And then we obviously need to get our height and then our height, so we can double check that to make sure we haven't stuffed up. But yeah, that's a basic way of doing it, pretty easy. The only thing you got to be careful of is cutting. It's got to be a nice straight cut, and I'm only doing it with a grinder. Which brings me to the next point. Probably not ideal to cut it with a grinder, not so critical indoors, but make sure if you do cut it with a grinder, you've got to get all that swarf and all that fine metal off of the sheet before you, especially like when we built the shed. Any grinder cuts, make sure you clean it off properly or it will rust away, and your colour bond will just have heaps of rust specks on it. So yeah, it's pretty critical. Cold saws are easily a much better idea. It's quicker too. Last sheet.